All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead. I don't want to take up too much time, but I have a couple of announcements and a little introduction here, and then we'll turn it over to our guest today. As far as announcements, just a couple things going on with the chamber. We have a business after hours event coming up on February 8th. Tacos. I don't know. I can pronounce this. I don't know. You have to look at the calendar. February 8th, 5 to 7. A fun event, and I missed some of the early ones of these. One of our own, Marty Jalove, has been doing once a month on a Wednesday evening, a free little workshop on different topics related to public speaking. He has one February 16th. It's called What to Say, from 7 to 9 at La Parroquia restaurant. And then right now we have our next Solopreneur meeting planned for February 24th. So put that one on your calendar. That will probably also be a lunchtime webinar. We're still firming up the details on that. For those of you who are new to this group, while we do some networking at some of our meetings, on these webinars, we do not, because it would take up too much of our time. But I did want to give a shout out to, on the registration list, I see 4 new chamber members that are on there. Rob from Carrera Consulting, Rob from Jefferson Hart, Nancy from Nancy Burgess Strategic Marketing, and Kayla from Your Home Reimagined. So welcome to all of you for participating. I encourage all of you to do a little short, if you want to do a little intro, put your contact information in chat, please go ahead and do that. And that will be our light version of networking today. Let's see, what else I have announcements. So our topic today is planning for growth in 2022. As I think as solopreneurs, we're chatting the planning committee, and we all admitted that we're not the best at planning. I think we all spend so much time running our businesses that it's sometimes hard to take that step back and do adequate planning, or to set good goals and to measure yourself towards those. So we looked around, and I'm proud to see our guest today, Josh, who you see, I think has a really unique perspective on this. He was a solopreneur, is a solopreneur. He has a podcast, and it's how I found out about him, called Solopreneur Grind. And he's interviewed, he can correct me in a second here, but I want to say it's over 100 solopreneurs, interviewed them on his podcast about their journey and obstacles they had, how they overcame things, how they achieved success. So I find it really interesting. So he has some prepared material, but like all of our meetings here, we want this to be interactive. So feel free to unmute and ask a question. You can put questions in chat. We certainly don't want this to be a talking head presentation. So don't be shy about jumping in. And this is also a no judgment zone. As solopreneurs, we don't have business partners that we can jump in a conference room and chat about strategies and throw stuff on the wall and see if it sticks. That's what this forum's for as well. So feel free to lob things out, even if they're just for discussion purposes, to give you ideas. So let's see. So I think that's it for my announcements. I'm going to turn it over to Josh Schachno from Solopreneur Grind is where I know him, but I know he's got a little bit more than that going on. So I'll let him introduce himself. Welcome, Josh, and thanks for supporting us.
Thanks very much, Kent. I appreciate you reaching out. I'm excited to be here. As Kent said, please feel free to make this interactive. I've planned for about a 20-25 minute chat where I'll give you a little bit of my backstory, and then I'll go into a little bit, some hopefully actionable tips and tools around planning. But I'm also, I wanted to leave 20-30 minutes for discussion, Q&A, whatever might be. So anyways, let's jump in. Quick agenda for the presentation today. I'll give you a quick introduction, just so you know a little bit more about my background, and I'll tell you a little bit about my solopreneur story that has evolved a little bit over time, just to give you some context on where I'm coming from. I'm going to talk about 3 key, key themes, I would call them, to planning for growth as a solopreneur. And then the other thing I've added at the end of each one is some tools. So some actionable, whether it be software or actionable items that you can actually use to implement those 3 keys. The ones that I'll be focusing on today: number 1, setting honest goals. And I'm going to go into detail, obviously, on each. Building scalable systems, and staying dangerously focused, which again, I'll go into details on each and provide some tools to do each of them. And then of course, I'll wrap up and hopefully leave a good half hour, maybe even longer for Q&A. Awesome, really quickly. So who am I? As I said, my name is Josh. I'm Canadian. So right now I'm located in Toronto, Ontario. I was actually born and raised in Ottawa, Ottawa being the capital of Canada. That's sometimes a misconception. A lot of non-Canadians or North Americans just assume that it's Toronto, but Ottawa is in fact the capital. I did my BCom, my Bachelor in Commerce at Carleton University. That's a university in Ottawa. And then I did my Juris Doctor, my law degree at Western University. I believe there's actually a Western University in the US as well. I went to the Canadian version, which is in London, Ontario. So what happened after that was a kind of random, interesting stream of events called the beginning of my career. What happened was I graduated from Western law, and in Canada, you have to do what's called articling, which means you have to spend 10 months almost doing like a paid internship at a law firm, and then you get called to the bar. Well, I articled at a firm that did civil litigation, and to make a long story short, I really didn't like it, and I decided not to go back and wasn't sure what to do with myself. My entrepreneurial or solopreneurial journey started because a friend of mine reached out. This is a friend going back decades, who said, Josh, I know you're not sure what you really want to do. My dad has been an immigration lawyer for decades. He's retiring. He wants to not do nothing and mentor a junior lawyer or work with a junior lawyer. Would you be interested? And the kicker to that was he was closing down his firm. He didn't want to employ anybody. He didn't want to pay anyone a salary. So the terms were, do you want to start your own law firm under kind of the mentorship of a more experienced lawyer? Now, at the time, I knew as much that you know about Canadian immigration law right now. I didn't take the course in school. I didn't practice it at the firm. The firm didn't do immigration law. But what I did know after doing some research was that, number one, immigration's pretty big in Canada, right? It's one of the things that we're known for. Number two, I liked the idea of just getting to start my own firm, my own company, right? I had my BCom. I always considered myself entrepreneurial. And number three, there was no better option. So I was like, you know what, let's give it a try. And what ended up happening is we ended up building a nice little niche law firm, working primarily, and I'll talk about niching down and stuff like that in just a few slides. We found a nice niche working with Toronto-based tech companies. So what I got very good at is helping tech companies bring in software developers from outside of the country. So we have a lot of companies, maybe it was a US company opening a branch in Canada and they wanted to move people over. Maybe it was a Canadian company with a remote worker in India and they wanted to bring them over. And that's what we got really, really good at. Now, what happened in that process is I got bored because it was a solopreneurial law firm, right? I had no staff. I was using a VA here and there. I'll get into that in just a little bit. But I was kind of bored, and like Kent alluded to earlier, it's a lonely journey, right? And I was consuming a lot of content, business podcasts, blogs, attending networking events, but I wanted to do something a little bit more. And I always thought I would just, I thought I'd be a good podcast host. And I thought at the very least, even if nobody listened, I would learn a lot, right? I'd be able to network with guests and I would learn a lot from them. So I started, I think it's a little over like 3 years ago now, the Solopreneur Grind podcast, where I would bring on solopreneurs. I would ask them about their journey. How did they get into entrepreneurship? How did they grow their business? What were the key lessons that they learned? And to make a long story short, I think episode 107 just went live last week. So I've talked to over 100 solopreneurs. I've learned a lot of which I'll be summarizing in the kind of more actionable part of the presentation. And I've gotten to meet people like Kent, right? If I didn't start that podcast, I wouldn't be here right now, because that's how Kent found me, right? I could talk all day about the benefits of podcasting, and maybe we'll save that for the Q&A session or something like that. Now, from there, fast forward about another year or two, and I got bored again. And the reason for that was I was doing good business right? The firm was doing 6 figures, clients were happy, I'm getting referrals, but I hadn't grown the company, I hadn't hired anybody. And I was kind of itching to do something a little bit more creative, right? For those of you who might not have experience with immigration law, it ultimately comes down to preparing documents and filling in forms. And I was getting bored of doing that. And having worked with all these innovative tech companies, I started thinking, why is there no tech for immigration, right? These forms don't change very much. It's, I'm cut pasting here on the back end. So about, what was it, a year and a half ago, I co-founded Visto, which is an immigration tech platform that makes immigration easier for aspiring immigrants. And in about a week and a half, we're launching a platform that makes it easy for Canadian companies to find developers from abroad and bring them into Canada without having to talk to a lawyer. So now that's where I spend most of my time as the CEO of Visto, building tech, which is an interesting experience, especially coming from the service background. And the last part of the story is related to kind of tying it all together. I started this tech company, but was still getting business coming in, right? Referrals, previous clients coming back, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I did was about a year ago, I partnered with another lawyer. Her name's Sonia. I knew her for a few years in my network. We were, in similar lines of business. I knew she was great. I trusted her, et cetera, et cetera. And we joined forces because I still had clients coming in that I needed someone to do the work for, and she wanted to grow her practice. She already had a small one. She wanted to make it bigger. So we formed Merbaha Schachno LLP. There's a small team. There's 4 of us, and we do a wide variety of corporate Canadian immigration. So helping companies sponsor workers, keep workers, help workers get permanent residence, citizenship, et cetera, et cetera. So the reason for all this is just to give a little bit of context and just let you know that the 3 tips I'm hopefully about to, or themes I'm going to talk about is guided by having some experience as a solopreneur in the service industry, as now a partner in a small practice, as well as a tech co-founder and a podcaster who's interviewed, more than 100 solopreneurs. So hopefully that's enough justification. But anyways, let's get into the fun stuff. And what I was thinking about when I prepared this deck was, what are things I wish I knew 5 years ago, right? 5+ years ago when I started. And this is a bit of a summary. So let's go into item number 1, setting honest goals. I'm going to take a quick sip of water here. Setting honest goals. Now, the kicker in those 3 words is honest, right? And I find this is especially important for solopreneurs. The main reason being, when all of us wake up in the morning and start the day, or in the afternoon, whenever the heck you want to wake up, right? There is no boss, right? There is nobody holding you accountable. There is nobody telling you what to do. There's nobody saying what you're doing is right or wrong, right? So the reason why goals are actually even more so important, and the reason why coming up with honest goals are so important, is because it's up to us to hold ourselves accountable. Otherwise, nobody else will, right? You can join masterminds, you can join chambers of commerce like this, you can hire a coach. But when you wake up every morning, right, Monday to Friday, some of us Saturday, Sunday, maybe some of us Monday to Wednesday, right? You need something to motivate and guide you to get that stuff done, right? So I actually don't think that setting accurate goals is the most important, because number 1, it's very hard to do. And number 2, it's probably not going to be a perfect goal anyways, right? None of us can see into the future 12 months. But what's very important to do, I would say, at the very least yearly, is sit down with yourself and set honest goals that will hold you accountable, right? I don't think you need a ton of goals, and there's a lot of content out there, right, on how to set goals. So I'm not going to go too deep, right? There's books, there's websites, everything. But to kind of summarize, my key thoughts are, you don't need a lot of them. In fact, you shouldn't have too many of them. They should be honest to hold you accountable so that day to day, you know what you have to do to move yourself and move your business forward, right? And goals can go beyond just your business, right? As a solopreneur, yes, you need business goals, but you also need things like personal goals, like health goals, like family goals. Otherwise, it's easy to let the business take over your life, right? If you're very focused on your business, all your goals are business related, the other areas of your life will probably suffer as a consequence. Now, I want to talk for a minute about niching down for two reasons. Number one, because I think it's a wise business decision. When you start out, especially, the hardest part is that there's too many things that you could do. The best thing you can do is pick one niche or pick a few niches to try and test out and double down on the ones that work so that you can be more efficient with your time. What do I mean by that? If you're a social media marketing manager and you have no niche, you could market to anybody, right? Lawyers, doctors, developers, everyone and their mother, right? But how do you market to everybody, right? You're gonna have to do a lot of things. You're gonna have to spend a lot of money. You're gonna have to hire a lot of people. If you are a LinkedIn lead generator for dentists, now you know what you gotta do, right? You gotta find dentists. What are their key problems? You gotta master LinkedIn. There you go, right? I mean, obviously it's more granular than that, but just to get started. And secondly, it's so much easier to improve and scale up. And I'll talk about kind of scaling up in a minute. But when you do one thing really well, it then becomes better to systemize and scale, right? And be efficient with your time. Again, I'll talk about that in just a second. I wanted to talk quickly about bootstrapping and fundraising. This was a point that Kent had noted in an email. That's a really interesting topic that I've been asked about a lot because I've done both now, right? I bootstrapped the firm and I raised money for the tech company. And my short answer for this, because there's a much longer answer that we can get into in the Q&A if there's interest, is I think that whether you bootstrap or fundraise depends on two things. Number one, what type of company do you want to grow? And number two, what type of life do you want to live? I'll start with the second one. If you want to work not work a 9 to 5, but if you want to work 9 to 5 and really prioritize family and have good work-life balance, you probably don't want to fundraise. The main reason being, as soon as you take other people's money, you now have their expectations and you might have to meet their goals, right? Which might not align with yours, especially if you're raising VC money, right? Venture capital money, kind of like tech investor money, right? They're not going to be happy to wait 3 years to hit X in revenue, right? Everything will be shrunk and you will have a lot of pressure on your shoulders to get a lot more done a lot more quickly. And maybe that's okay. But like I said, if you're looking to shut the laptop down at 5 on Friday, then maybe it's not right for you. Secondly, if you're starting a B2B service-based business, there's probably much less of a need for you to bootstrap than if you're starting a B2C tech company that's a social media network, right? Just as an example. The key differentiator here is some companies require much more money and are required to have much steeper growth curves than others, right? If you're a B2B company, even if you're in tech, right? Because of the nature of accepting money from companies, it's much easier to get your revenue going up and to build sustainable growth. If you're trying to build a B2C platform like a Facebook or a TikTok or an Instagram, you need to explode user growth, right? Pretty quickly. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble. TikTok gained 100 million users in the last 12 months. The only way you do that is by fundraising, right? Unless you can hit a gold mine somehow. And the other reason why fundraising can be very important in those cases is to stave off competitors, right? Because there's almost two reasons to raise money. Number one is you want natural growth. You need to hire more people, et cetera, et cetera. The other reason is you're becoming or are the 10,000-pound gorilla in the industry, but you want to keep that position. And so by raising more money, you're building a moat around your company so that the little guys don't even have a chance of catching up. So anyways, that's my spiel on bootstrapping and fundraising. And of course, if there's questions, please feel free to let me know. Now, my favorite life tools that have to relate to kind of setting goals and managing time and stuff like that. Number one, this isn't a tool, staying active and eating healthy. I think double so as a solopreneur, right? If you're healthy, If you're in good shape, if you're eating well, you will be thinking better and providing better, right? You'll make better decisions and you'll have better outcomes. Secondly, is sleep for the exact same reason. I happen to not be one of those people that can operate on 6 hours of sleep, unfortunately. So I do my best to get 7.5, 8 per night. And I think we can all agree that when you don't hit whatever that threshold is that you need, because everyone's different, you feel it the next day, right? You're groggier, your decision-making might slide. And this is different, right? If you're a decision maker in a 1,000-person company and you have one day and you make some bad decisions, the world's not ending tomorrow, right? When you're the only employee of a company, it's very important that we're showing up with a sound and healthy mind every day, because these decisions make such a big difference to us, right? In terms of a little bit more practical and like day to day, the two things I can't operate without every day of the year is my notepad. Show it to you right here. My notepad, it's not pretty, but it gets the job done. And my calendar, which actually I can show you here because it's on my second screen. This is all the Zoom stuff that's in the way, but my calendar. And the way I use these is, number one, if I have an event, it goes on my calendar, right? If I'm attending this webinar, if somebody, having a call with somebody, I'm going to the gym at 5 p.m., it goes on the calendar and then it gets done. If it doesn't go on my calendar, it doesn't get done, right? The notepad I use, and this is what I do, right? So take it with a grain of salt. The notepad is for to-do items that aren't necessarily linked to a specific time, right? So the to-do list is, what are the things I need to do in the short term? And I have it on a list. And every morning, the first thing I do when I start working is I go through the list and I check off which items I'm doing today or trying to do today, and in what order I'm going to do them. And that means when I wake up and start work as a solopreneur or someone who doesn't have a boss, I'm still structuring and making myself accountable to what I have to get done today, right? Because I have everything. Here's everything I need to do. And now I cut it down to here's what I'm going to do today, and here's what order I'm going to do it in. And then I just do it, right? If you systematize it like that, then it's a little bit more easier and it adds a little bit more structure. The last two, I don't do every day. I don't even do every week, but I want to note them because I have used them before and because they're highly recommended by many of my guests on the show, which is journaling and meditation. They've worked the best for me in times of stress. I don't journal every week and I don't meditate every week. I feel like would I benefit from doing them both every week? Probably, but I just feel like I don't need it and I haven't fit them into my schedule. But if I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling extra stressed, if add the 10 other things that stress us out as solopreneurs, I find that writing it down, preferably by hand, sometimes on a Word doc, or working 5 to 10 minutes of meditation into my day, even if it's for 3 days or a week, helps to slow my brain down and get all the crap out so that I can reorganize and manage what's important or not. Again, suggestion, things that have worked for me and things that have been recommended many, many times from podcast guests. Now, number two, this is really important, I think, for solopreneurs, especially because it's never been easier to leverage technology and build scalable systems. Before I get into the nitty-gritty, the mindset shift is so important here, right? Working on the business and not what they call working in the business. The two books that come to mind and that are recommended a lot are The E-Myth. I think now The E-Myth Revisited is the most updated version. And or the one that I read, which is very similar, is called Built to Sell by John Warrillow. It's somewhere behind me. But these two books focus on building almost like removing yourself from the business and working on it and not in it. So that, the end goal being one day, you can wake up and theoretically not do anything and the business would still run and maybe it would even grow without you. And or if you ever want to sell it, then it's a much more valuable asset, right? Because if you're trying to sell a business that's totally reliable on you and your network and your connections, the valuation will be much lower. So leveraging tech. It's never been an easier time to start a business. Note how I said start and not necessarily grow, because it's very competitive out there. It's never been easier to start because of all the tools we have available, right? You can get a business website up now in 5 minutes, right? You can have all of these tools, social media, et cetera, that never existed 10, 15, 20 years ago to make you look professional, to get things done, to book calls, et cetera. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed, especially once the revenue starts to go up or has been going up or is already quite high, try to find, and I'm going to highlight a few in just a second, try to find some tools that can save you time and get you the same level of output or just about the same level of output as before. On the next page, I have a whole list that I'll go through quickly. Hiring is big, right? I know this is a solopreneur talk. And again, this is going to depend on the type of business you want to build and kind of life you want to build. But thinking about hiring can be exciting and can also really help take your business to next levels. Now, hiring is different whether you bootstrap or fundraise for obvious reasons, like how much money's in the bank. But one of my guests recently put it really interestingly. He was trying to grow a business quite fast and basically said, anytime monthly revenue went up by, I forget if he said 5 or 10K, they hired another person. So if you're looking to move big, like move quick, that might be one way to think about it. Another way to think about it is that if we look at like revenue as like a curve, right? It's very difficult to pick. There's no perfect time to hire, right? Because it's a little bit different for everybody depending on your needs. But what you want to do is find kind of like a nice range in monthly revenue where you're not eating too much into your own profits and what you might need to live on at the end of the day versus the potential growth, right? The key to think about for hiring if you want to grow your company is, if I hire this person, how much more time will it unlock for me so that I can grow revenue that doesn't scale, less scalable revenue locked to my time, right? So if you're hiring someone for 50K, do the math, right? That's how much per hour? $25 an hour. But if you can spend an hour, or if it takes you 5 to 10 hours to do 10K in sales, it's an easy trade-off, right? So a good way to think about hiring is breaking it down by hourly on the expense side and looking at the potential upside on the sales side. That's been one way to kind of help me not just figure out when to do it, but be comfortable with doing it, right? Because the first few times you hire, it can be scary and it can be stressful, especially for those first few months where you're like, I hope revenue goes up enough, or it's going to hurt my bottom line at the end of the month. The other caveat I want to add or mention is virtual assistants, I think, might be one of the best tools. I'm saying tool, obviously virtual assistants are real people, but I'm saying they might be the lowest hanging fruit or best opportunity to get more things done for less than anything. If you can find a good virtual assistant in lower cost of living countries, like for example, I've used one VA from the Philippines on and off for the last probably 3 years, and she's happy to do work at $5 to $10 an hour, right? And the amount of time that saves us, or the amount of things she can accomplish in that amount of time for such a small cost is like incredible. So think about the little repetitive or outsourceable or automatable tasks that you could give to a VA for pennies on the dollar, and again, unlock more of your time to do the high value activities for your business. Quickly, a couple of my favorite tools. Yep.
Guys, real quick, I just wanted to comment on those tools you're just talking about. For me, and the type of business I want to have, hiring is not something I want to do, but kind of my version of that is partnering with people. So I do website design, and there are often related services that I could offer, but I don't have the bandwidth, but I can partner with complementary folks, and some in the chamber, some on the call here, a couple of them on the call I've done that with. So I guess that's another version of hiring, if you will, is just find ways to multiply your resources by partnering with contractors. I call them collaborators, fellow travelers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, it's a great strategy. I think if you want to remain a solopreneur and not hire anybody, you should look to fill any service that doesn't fall under your specialty, either outsource or partner it. And you want to stick to doing what you do best. That's how your dollars per hour are going to be the highest. And that's probably how your bottom line profit at the end of the year is going to be maximized. So it's a great idea. In terms of actual tools I use, I'll just go down the list here quickly. There's a few more too, but I didn't want to.
I had a question too before you run
Yep.
into that. You virtual assistant, you're talking about little tasks beyond like answering the phone. What kind of tasks do you, I mean, you wouldn't give them bookkeeping tasks, right? I mean, you're paying them, $5 an hour. You don't want them, seeing your cash flow.
Well, so it's a good question, Peter. Like, I've given my VA so many random things to do over the last few years. I don't do bookkeeping. We use a bookkeeper just because, not even because I'm afraid to share numbers, just because numbers are so important and I just want it done by someone who specializes in bookkeeping.
Right.
But she's done everything from automated outreach to researching, lists of emails of clients we want to talk to, right now she's doing sourcing for my immigration platform. Like anything, like go through your list of what you're doing every week, right? Like audit your to-do list every single week. And a good activity one of my recent guests on the podcast said is at the end of every day, he asks himself, what did I do today that could be done by somebody else? Right? Because I unfortunately, Peter, I don't know you and your business well enough right now, right? But if you audit what you're doing every day and or every week, you'd probably be surprised at how much basic things that you could outsource. The key here with VAs is you have to be very good at giving instructions, right? So the trade-off is you can get a lot done for very, very little money. The trade-off is if you aren't good at instructions and breaking it down, they will spin their wheels and not be very effective. And what this trains you to do is become really good at giving instructions, right? So when I send her instructions, they're broken down, right? Line by line, like hey, if I need her to go to this link, I'll write, go to linkedin.com, right? What I did last time, I just got her going again 2 days ago. I did a Vidyard screen recording, right? So I recorded my screen with audio and I said, hey, Joan, here's what I want you to do, right? Go to this website, go here, type in this, blah, blah, blah. And then you have to make it as clear as possible. If you're working with people who are pretty good, I recommend the Philippines personally. That's where my VA is from. And we're now actually in the process of working with even more. In the Philippines, they speak very good English. They're nice people. They're hard workers. And $5 an hour for them is a great, great standard of living. So everybody's kind of happy, if that makes sense. Does that help, Peter?
Yeah.
Awesome. Really quickly, some of the tools that I've used a lot and or really like over the years. I use G Suite for every company except our firm. We use Outlook, but I really like G Suite, especially for Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Forms, and how they integrate. Zapier, if you haven't heard of Zapier or something like Zapier, it basically allows you to do if-then automations. If my client fills out a Google form, send them a document or send them an email with this. If, there's a million integrations, go on zapier.com, or there's cheaper options too. I haven't used them, but it can be the easiest and quickest way to set up integrations. For example, someone signs up to your email list, add them to this form, send them this email, you know what I mean? So stuff like that. Airtable, I've used many times now. We use it a lot for Visto, is a much more powerful spreadsheet. So if Google Sheets or Excel isn't good for you, check out Airtable. They have a free version, very powerful, especially if you need to do a lot of filtering. It also integrates with Zapier. Aweber, MailerLite, these are email software providers. So if you have an email list, if you're growing an email list, if you're trying to start an email list, I've been using Aweber for a while. It's very reliable. I wouldn't say it's incredible, especially in terms of like data and reporting, But if you just want to send basic emails, does the job. MailerLite has a good free plan. MailChimp's another famous one. It's okay. I've used it before. We're using Sendinblue with Visto. I don't love it, to be honest. There's a million others, right? SendGrid. There's a whole bunch of other ones you can try too. If you want to build a website, I've used Squarespace. Very easy. A little on the pricey. If you want to build your own website, Squarespace a little bit more on the pricey side, but super easy to just drag and drop. You can have a website up in an hour. Card.co is great for simple, small websites with a couple pages, or even just if you want one landing page up really fast. What I end up using now for pretty much all my websites is WordPress plus Elementor. The reason for this is I'm not techie enough to custom build a website, but WordPress is straightforward enough. And if you combine it with Elementor, it kind of turns it into drag and drop. So you kind of get some of the benefits of Squarespace, but it's cheaper and you can customize more of it because Squarespace and Card, you're kind of limited in functionality. Namecheap, Server Pilot, Digital, this is what I use for like domains, hosting, all that stuff. To be honest, Kent might be like a better, or someone in the IT tech space might be better, but those are ones I've used. And then Hootsuite, Descript, and Mail Media are for things like outreach and or social media management and stuff like that. I'm going to keep cruising to the last topic here because I want to give, I do have to leave at the top of the hour, but I want to have some time for Q&A. Staying dangerously focused really highly also relates to, niching down, and especially as a solopreneur, it can be tough to stay focused day to day. And what do I mean by that? There's a lot of shiny lights out there, right? We all, especially as entrepreneurs, I find that I have shiny object syndrome sometimes with Reddit posts and new business ideas and, the newest gadget that we can use. But the best thing you can do, especially if you find that one niche that's working really well, that one activity, that one market that you focus really well on, and it's very lucrative, et cetera, and or you're very excited about it, you enjoy it a lot, is do everything you can to stay focused on that day to day, right? And there's a wide variety of ways to do that. I have some tools I'm going to talk about in just a second. I think breaks and vacations are probably underrated for solopreneurs. The big trap that I fell into, and probably am still under, is if I'm not working on my business, then the business isn't growing, right? Maybe some of you can relate to having that thought. But the reality is, and I've hit this wall almost every year around November. I hit like a mental wall where I'm not as effective. I'm not thinking as straight. I just don't feel as motivated in the morning waking up. And over time, that can have very negative effects on your business. So what I recommend doing is being strategic with breaks and vacations. What's worked the best for me is scheduling them way ahead of time, and or just getting them on a calendar, right? Even if that means booking something earlier and or paying a little bit more. But if you book a return, resort vacation in Mexico for this week, it's much more likely you're going to take that vacation, right? The trap that I fall into is, oh, well, I'll wait, or I'll figure it out near the end of it. And then you just don't book a vacation and the year's gone by and you're not working at an optimized level. So be strategic about it. Heck, even like once a month, take a Monday off, right? Once a month, take a Friday off. Just take it and give yourself the ability to not feel guilty about it. And you will probably be better for it in the long run. I wanted to quickly and lastly talk about self-doubt and imposter syndrome, because it comes up a lot. And I think it's probably something we can all relate to. I don't have a great answer to it. What I'll say to self-doubt and imposter syndrome is the best thing that I've found is to reflect on the good things that have happened for you and to you in the past. So what do I mean by this? Looking at financials, right? How'd you do in the last year? Was it really good? How was your last month? Was it really good? Awesome, right? Celebrate that a little bit. Do you have a lot of testimonials on your website, on your LinkedIn? Go read them once in a while, right? Like once in a while we think, what am I doing? Who am I to say this, blah, blah, blah. What helps me the most is when I go on my LinkedIn and I read some of the referrals from immigrants I've brought to Canada. And it's like a good, in a weird way, a reminder of, oh crap, that's a tangible outcome that I provided for somebody. And that's why I'm doing this, right? And those people needed me, and we had a good exchange of goods, and everyone was happier for it in the end. I think we're all going to have some level of self-doubt and imposter syndrome. It's a matter of surrounding yourself with good people, good content, and good systems to help you fight through it. Because I still haven't found a perfect solution. I'll talk about some tools here quickly that might help. In general, staying focused. The Pomodoro technique I've found very useful. I have a Chrome extension for it. This basically in English means work for 25 minutes and then take a break for 5 minutes. And I find that it's a good breakdown of time wherein you're still being effective and you're still like giving yourself enough of a break so that those 25 minutes are really efficient. So that's helped me very well, especially if I'm just having an off day or I'm just not working as efficiently. You start the clock and you turn off the notifications for the 25, and then you give yourself permission to do whatever the heck you want for the 5. You do a few sessions of that and you can get a lot done. Yearly calendar reminders. I use my calendar for a wide variety of random things that maybe some people don't, right? Vacations, a reminder to book a vacation, a reminder to take a day off this month, right? I don't even put the day in. I might just set a reminder. For example, what I wanted to start doing was take 2 vacations a year, right? Like a week per half year. And so in June, set a reminder in your calendar, book second half of your vacation, right? Leverage the calendar to remind you of things that you know you should do that you often put off. I think motivational content is good if it helps you, right? So things like podcasts, even things like following people, if you're using Instagram, if you're using TikTok. Like I think Gary Vee is a good example. There's a lot of people love or hate Gary Vee. I don't follow him necessarily for the business advice. I just follow him because I think he's motivational. And sometimes, I need an emotional kick in the ass in the morning. And so that can help, right? Or find whoever works for you. So that's it in terms of the presentation. I really hope it was helpful and that some of the tools were helpful as well. In terms of if there's any outreach, or you want to get in touch or see any of my stuff, LinkedIn, please feel free to connect. There's only one Josh Schachno that I know of on there. My email I have in the middle here. This is my podcast email. And then in terms of websites, Visto.ai is my immigration tech platform if there's any interest in that. Solopreneur Grind is for the podcast. Solopreneur Grind and joshschachno.com are really where I have my podcast, my blog. I also have an email list. I send a bi-weekly email every 2 weeks, just talking about my last 2 weeks in business, what I've learned. I do book reviews. So whenever I finish a book, I do a little review on what I think about it and the key takeaways.
Hey, Josh, let's jump into Q&A. We're going to run out of time here, but does anyone have a question?
Yeah, by all means, about anything we talked about.
Or if we missed something, other stuff too.
There's lots to talk about, right?
So if you have a question, you have to unmute, and if you wouldn't mind flipping your camera on, that'd be great too if you have a question. So while people are coming together with questions, one, Josh, that I run into, I want to get your thoughts on when it comes to doing social media as a solopreneur. Do you have any thoughts about that? I know I talk to a lot of solopreneurs who intend to do social media, but for some reason it doesn't always happen. Or if they are doing it, they aren't necessarily thrilled with it. But do you have any thoughts on social media?
Yeah, I think similarly to a lot of the other stuff I talked about, if you want to do social media as a solopreneur, again, the best thing you can do is focus on 1 or 2 platforms. The reason being, there's a lot of platforms, right? Like you look at big companies and they have whole teams, right? To manage Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, LinkedIn, the list goes on, right? And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed and or can't keep up when they realize how much they need to pump out, right? And or repurpose to the different platforms. So what's worked really well for me is I picked 2 platforms, and I said, I'm going to focus all my efforts on those, and everything else I don't even care about, right? So in my case, TikTok has been incredible for me, especially in the immigration space, and LinkedIn. And you want to be a little bit strategic, right, about which platforms you use, right? If you're targeting 55-year-old lawyers, you might not want to be on TikTok, right? But the other thing to keep in mind is which platforms are you more comfortable with? I personally never really used or liked Twitter. It's probably a good platform for me, but if I'm only going to focus on 2, I want to pick the ones that I'm most comfortable with, because then I know I'm going to keep up with them. So I post 1 to 3 videos every business day on TikTok. And then I try to post 3 to 5 times a week on LinkedIn. And because I made kind of that plan and just stuck to those 2, it's been easy, right? I do it month over month. And that's what it takes in social media, right? If you're posting once a week on 6 different platforms, you're probably not growing much of a follower base, right? It's got to be good enough, consistent content, and that'll grow those followers and lead to hopefully some effective outcomes.
Okay, and I would mention earlier we talked about virtual assistants. There are some who specialize in social media, so if you don't have the time or interest in learning social media, that's an easy.
Or use them. So, like a great way to tackle this is to focus on 1 or 2 and have a VA do the rest, right?
Okay.
So for example, and this is what we used to use our VA for too. I used to record a video every day on TikTok. Our VA would download the video, repurpose it, upload it on Instagram, right? Add the hashtags, blah, blah, because I don't use it Instagram personally. I don't love social media. I love it for business. I don't really use it personally, right? So again, we can piece a few things together, right? VA or Zapier, right?
Okay.
Every time you post on this, Zapier might even be able to scrape that data and prep it for you somewhere else. Or you can use a tool like Hootsuite where you can upload an image once and then write the text once and post it to multiple platforms at the same time.
Okay, let's go rapid fire here because I think we've got some questions rolling in now and we're going to run out of time. So short questions and short answers. Joe, did you have a question? I see you got your video on. Does that mean you've got a question?
No, it's nice to meet you. I'm a local attorney here. So, this was a terrific presentation, I think. I'm in the market for, I've been practicing for 8 years and I'm in the market for a little growth here, or, and you're hiring things. So anyways, very interesting. I'm interested in getting and seeing your podcasts for some other people. So
awesome. What type of law, Joe?
So I do real estate, property tax appeals, and then I'm looking to maybe get into this estate planning field and kind of see where, again, some of the different things you're kind of doing, even like I've been thinking about the tech thing, how you can make that for estate planning or for my tax appeal business or even the real estate stuff. It's a lot of hands-on with being, an attorney. Obviously you have the form portion, but you have the knowing of what to do in the immigration space, I'm sure. And, but I've been doing it myself for 8 years, and I got 4 years ago, I got a case management system, and, it saved me from having to hire somebody 4 years ago. So that's kind of for the group that, get whatever technology to make you organize. And that mine was this case management thing. And there's a lot of automation built into it that, again, saved me, again, 50 grand a year times 4 years, $200,000, by doing this. But again, maybe I needed, now I'm still, it's to a point where I need, again, maybe focus on the business portion and stop doing some of the other things. So, again, this is great timing for this event or this thing. So Ken, thanks for setting it up. And again, that's getting the wheels turning here a little bit. So
I have one request of people. We talked about virtual assistants, and I can't tell you how many times I've had people in the chamber ask me, can you recommend a good virtual assistant? I don't use one, I would ask if somebody has a recommendation, you can offer it out or you can put it in chat. Because I know we have a fair number of people who would love to find a good VA, and some are very particular and want one relatively local. Others are fine with, as Josh said, somebody overseas or whatever is fine as well. So please share those if you know of a good VA. Anyone else have a question? I got one here that came in that was on exit strategies, I guess you would say. Do you have any thoughts, Josh, on exit strategies?
I have some thoughts. I haven't been through one yet, right? So I can't speak from experience of selling a business. I think it directly relates to what we talked about earlier of working on the business, right? Because if you don't build a business that at least isn't operational a little bit without you, it's going to be you might be able to sell it, but you might not get a very high multiple or valuation on that business, right? So I think everything we talked about, especially the second step, systemizing, automating, because you don't necessarily have to show that certain parts of the business can be done by a specialist. You just have to show that there's parts of your business that don't rely on you, right? The more a business needs you as a unique individual to do it, the lower the valuation you're going to get on a business, right? So I can't stress reading a book like that enough, either the E-Myth Revisited or Built to Sell by John Warrillow, or just some of that content that helps you really think about you as an operator or an overseer of the company, and the cogs being able to spin without you, whether that be hiring people, VAs, tech automation, et cetera, because the reality is anybody can sell a business, right? Or most people can sell a business if it's a half decent business. The key metric is how high is the valuation going to be, right? And the last thing that someone wants to do, if your goal is to sell your business eventually, is work for decades and build the revenue and make a good living for yourself. And then you go to sell it and realize that it's worth 1/10 of what you think it is because you haven't set up the right systems and processes. And, there might be a lot of disappointment there. I actually think, Kent, if I can flip the question on its head, I think acquiring businesses is probably the second best opportune thing that you can look for if you're a solopreneur looking to either grow your own practice or expand it into entrepreneurship, we'll call it, is there's some crazy stat that 10,000 baby boomers are retiring a day. And what is it, 5 or 10% of them are entrepreneurs or something like that, right? So do the math, right? Every day, hundreds of business owners are retiring. And this one particular article I read was saying that most of their kids don't want to run their boring businesses, right? Because when you started a business 30, 40 years ago, you were a plumber or you sold, whatever. Now all the kids want to be YouTube stars and stuff like that, right? So if you're a lawyer, right, and you're trying to build a practice in the wills and estates area, maybe there's a lawyer out there who's thinking of retiring soon. Maybe you don't have to buy his firm. Maybe you could buy his book of business, right? Buy a book of clients, or keep an eye out there for a website that is being sold, right? Maybe there's someone who built, I love, this is almost for fun, to go on sites like Flippa or Micro Acquire or Biz Buy Sell, because what if somebody started a blog and they, for some weird reason, were passionate about wills and estates, right? They start a blog and now it gets 10,000 visitors a month, but it was a side project. They were some dev, they started on the side, or they're a passionate writer, and now they want to sell it because they're focused on anything else, right? That's extremely valuable to Joe, right? And Joe could get that at a discount because who the heck else is buying, wills and estates blogs, right? So keep an eye out, not just for businesses, but as online assets, digital assets You can buy and sell websites, blogs. You can buy and sell social media accounts. There's obviously a little bit more that might go into that because people can, buy followers and stuff like that. But if you're trying to increase your, I don't know, like dog walking business, and someone's selling an Instagram account with 100,000 followers posting dog photos, like maybe there's an alignment there and you could buy it for a few $100s. You know what I mean? So anyways, we're coming up to the hour, so I'll stop that rant, but maybe that gets some wheels spinning as well.
All right, thanks. We do. We have we have 2 or 3 minutes left here. Another chance, maybe we can sneak in another quick question.
And if any questions pop up after, you guys have my email, you have my LinkedIn, feel free to add me either way, shoot me a message if you have any feedback, then then I'm always open to it.
I just want to say great presentation, Josh. I mean, it's such a great reminder of, to stay on track, and there was great tips. So thank you so much. And there was a great ideas on my couple of notes. So I'm excited to kind of get some ideas from you. So thank you so much for your time. And Kent, thank you for organizing as usual. Bravo.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
my
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Everyone just wants to know what the weather's like up there, Josh.
It
Negative
was
here,
starting to
dude.
snow. No, it was about -12 this morning.
Yeah.
I right before this, I actually went for a run. Canada has been very strict in terms of COVID, and we're on lockdown for the next 3 days. So they closed the private gym in my building. So I had to run outside. It's the only way I can get exercise. So I've been running outside for the last few weeks, and the first week or two were not fun, but now I'm starting to adjust. So anyways.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you participating. And like we said, Josh, open it up, with this contact information. Josh, can you make that presentation available to us so we can post that for people? Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you the PDF in an email. And yeah, thanks again for the invite, Kent, and thanks to everybody who showed up. Hopefully it helped a little bit.
It
Yeah.
did.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Good day, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.